Chapter 18. David fights. In the days that followed, David struck hard at the Philistines, bringing them to their knees, captured Gath, and took control of the surrounding countryside. He also fought and defeated Moab. The Moabites came under David's rule and paid regular tribute. On his way to restore his sovereignty at the Euphrates River, David defeated Hadadezer, king of Zobah, over toward Hamath. David captured 1,000 chariots, 7,000 cavalry, and 20,000 infantry from him. He hamstrung all the chariot horses, but saved back 100. When the Arameans from Damascus came to the aid of Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David killed 22,000 of them. David set up a puppet government in Aram Damascus. The Arameans became subjects of David and were forced to bring tribute. God gave victory to David wherever he marched. David plundered the gold shields that belonged to the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. He also looted Tebah and Kun, cities of Hadadezer, of a huge quantity of bronze that Solomon later used to make the great bronze sea, the pillars, and bronze equipment in the temple. Tou, king of Hamath, heard that David had struck down the entire army of Hadadezer, king of Zobah. He sent his son, Hadoram, to King David to greet and congratulate him for fighting and defeating Hadadezer. Tou and Hadadezer were old enemies. Hadoram brought David various things made of silver, gold, and bronze. King David consecrated these things along with the silver and gold that he had plundered from other nations, Edom, Moab, the Ammonites, the Philistines, and Amalek. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, fought and defeated the Edomites in the valley of Salt, 18,000 of them. He set up a puppet government in Edom, and the Edomites became subjects under David. God gave David victory wherever he marched. Thus, David ruled over all of Israel. He ruled well, fair, and even-handed in all his duties and relationships. Joab, son of Zeruiah, was head of the army. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was in charge of public records. Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Abimelech, son of Abiathar, were priests. Shavsha was secretary. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the special forces, the Kerethites and Pelethites. And David's sons held high positions, close to the king. Chapter 19. Sometime after this, Nahash, king of the Ammonites, died, and his son succeeded him as king. David said, "I'd like to show some kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash. Treat him as well and as kindly as his father treated me." So David sent condolences about his father's death. But when David's servants arrived in Ammonite country and came to Hanun to bring condolences, the Ammonite leaders warned Hanun, "Do you for a minute suppose that David is honoring your father by sending you comforters? Don't you know that he sent these men to snoop around the city and size it up so he can capture it?" So Hanun seized David's men, shaved them clean, cut off their robes halfway up their buttocks, and sent them packing. When this was all reported to David, he sent someone to meet them, for they were seriously humiliated. The king told them, "Stay in Jericho until your beards grow out. Only then come back." When it dawned on the Ammonites that as far as David was concerned, they stank to high heaven, they hired, at a cost of 1,000 talents of silver, 37.5 tons, chariots and horsemen from the Arameans of Naharaim, Maacah, and Zobah, 32,000 chariots and drivers, plus the king of Maacah with his troops who came and set up camp at Medeba. The Ammonites, too, were mobilized from their cities and got ready for battle. When David heard this, he dispatched Joab with his strongest fighters in full force. The Ammonites marched out and spread out in battle formation at the city gate. The kings who had come as allies took up a position in the open fields. When Joab saw that he had two fronts to fight, before and behind, he took his pick of the best of Israel and deployed them to confront the Arameans. The rest of the army he put under the command of Abishai, his brother, and deployed them to deal with the Ammonites. Then he said, "If the Arameans are too much for me, you help me, and if the Ammonites prove too much for you, I'll come and help you. Courage. We'll fight might and main for our people and for the cities of our God, and God will do whatever he sees needs doing." But when Joab and his soldiers moved in to fight the Arameans, they ran off in full retreat. Then the Ammonites, seeing the Arameans run for dear life, took to their heels and ran from Abishai into the city. So Joab withdrew from the Ammonites and returned to Jerusalem. When the Arameans saw how badly they'd been beaten by Israel, they picked up the pieces and regrouped. They sent for the Arameans who were across the river. Shophak, commander of Hadadezer's army, led them. When all this was reported to David, he mustered all Israel, crossed the Jordan, advanced, and prepared to fight. The Arameans went into battle formation, ready for David, and the fight was on. But the Arameans again scattered before Israel. David killed 7,000 chariot drivers and 40,000 infantry. He also killed Shophak, the army commander. When all the kings who were vassals of Hadadezer saw that they had been routed by Israel, they made peace with David and served him. The Arameans were afraid to help the Ammonites ever again. Chapter 20. That spring, the time when kings usually go off to war, Joab led the army out and ravaged the Ammonites. He then set siege to Rabbah. David, meanwhile, was back in Jerusalem. Joab hit Rabbah hard and left it in ruins. David took the crown off the head of their king. Its weight was found to be a talent of gold and set with a precious stone. It was placed on David's head. He hauled great quantities of loot from the city and put the people to hard labor with saws and picks and axes. This is what he did to all the Ammonites. Then David and his army returned to Jerusalem. Later, war broke out with the Philistines at Gezer. That was the time Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Sippai of the clan of giants. The Philistines had to eat crow. In another war with the Philistines, Elhanan, son of Jair, killed Lamai, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, whose spear was like a ship's boom. And then there was the war at Gath, that featured a hulking giant who had 24 fingers and toes, 6 on each hand and foot, yet another from the clan of giants. When he mocked Israel, Jonathan, son of Shimeah, David's brother, killed him. These came from the clan of giants and were killed by David and his men. Chapter 21. David, Satan, and Araunah. Now Satan entered the scene and seduced David into taking a census of Israel. David gave orders to Joab and the army officers under him. Canvass all the tribes of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, and get a count of the population. I want to know the number. Joab resisted. May God multiply his people by hundreds. Don't they all belong to my master the king? But why on earth would you do a thing like this? Why risk getting Israel into trouble with God? But David wouldn't take no for an answer. So Joab went off and did it, canvassed the country, and then came back to Jerusalem and reported the results of the census. There were 1,100,000 fighting men. Of that total, Judah accounted for 470,000. Joab, disgusted by the command, it in fact turned his stomach, protested by leaving Levi and Benjamin out of the census taking. And God, offended by the whole thing, punished Israel. Then David prayed, I have sinned badly in what I have just done, substituting statistics for trust. Forgive my sin. I've been really stupid. God answered by speaking to Gad, David's pastor. Go and give David this message. God's word, you have your choice of 3 punishments. Choose one, and I'll do the rest. Gad delivered the message to David. Do you want 3 years of famine, 3 months of running from your enemies while they chase you down, or 3 days of the sword of God, an epidemic unleashed on the country by an angel of God? Think it over and make up your mind. What shall I tell the one who sent me? David told Gad, they're all terrible, but I'd rather be punished by God, whose mercy is great, than fall into human hands. So God unleashed an epidemic in Israel. 70,000 Israelites died. God then sent the angel to Jerusalem, but when he saw the destruction about to begin, he compassionately changed his mind and ordered the death angel, enough's enough, pull back. The angel of God had just reached the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. David looked up and saw the angel hovering between earth and sky, sword drawn, and about to strike Jerusalem. David and the elders bowed in prayer and covered themselves with rough burlap. David prayed, please, I'm the one who sinned. I'm the one at fault. But these sheep, what did they do wrong? Punish me, not them, me and my family. Don't take it out on them. the angel of God ordered Gad to tell David to go and build an altar to God on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. David did what Gad told him in obedience to God's command. Meanwhile, Araunah had quit threshing the wheat and was watching the angel. His 4 sons took cover and hid. David came up to Araunah. When Araunah saw David, he left the threshing floor and bowed deeply before David, honoring the king. David said to Araunah, "Give me the site of the threshing floor so I can build an altar to God. Charge me the market price. We're going to put an end to this disaster." "Oh, master, my king," said Araunah, "just take it. Do whatever you want with it. Look, here's an ox for the burnt offering, and threshing paddles for the fuel, and wheat for the meal offering. It's all yours." David replied to Araunah, "No, I'm buying it from you, and at the full market price. I'm not going to offer God sacrifices that are no sacrifice." So David bought the place from Araunah for 600 shekels of gold. He built an altar to God there and sacrificed whole burnt offerings and peace offerings. He called out to God, and God answered by striking the altar of whole burnt offering with lightning. Then God told the angel to put his sword back into its scabbard. And that's the story of what happened when David saw that God answered him on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite at the time he offered the sacrifice. At this time the tabernacle that Moses had constructed in the desert, and with it the altar of burnt offering, were set up at the worship center at Gibeon. But David, terrified by the angel's sword, wouldn't go there to pray to God anymore. So David declared, "From now on, this is the site for the worship of God. This is the place for Israel's altar of burnt offering." Chapter 22. David charges Solomon to build the temple. David ordered all the resident aliens in the land to come together. He sent them to the stone quarries to cut dressed stone to build the temple of God. He also stockpiled a huge quantity of iron for nails and bracings for the doors of the gates, more bronze than could be weighed, and cedar logs past counting. The Sidonians and Tyrians shipped in huge loads of cedar logs for David. David was thinking, "My son Solomon is too young to plan ahead for this. But the sanctuary that is to be built for God has to be the greatest, the talk of all the nations. So I'll get the construction materials together." That's why David prepared this huge stockpile of building materials before he died. Then he called in Solomon his son and commanded him to build a sanctuary for the God of Israel. David said to Solomon, "I wanted in the worst way to build a sanctuary to honor my God. But God prevented me, saying, 'You've killed too many people, fought too many wars. You are not the one to honor me by building a sanctuary. You've been responsible for too much killing, too much bloodshed. But you are going to have a son, and he will be a quiet and peaceful man, and I will calm his enemies down on all sides. His very name will speak peace, that is, Solomon, which means peace. And I'll give peace and rest under his rule. He will be the one to build a sanctuary in my honor. He'll be my royal adopted son, and I'll be his father, and I'll make sure that the authority of his kingdom over Israel lasts forever. So now, son, God be with you. God's speed as you build the sanctuary for your God, the job God has given you. And may God also give you discernment and understanding when he puts you in charge of Israel, so that you will rule in reverent obedience under God's revelation. That's what will make you successful, following the directions and doing the things that God commanded Moses for Israel. Courage. Take charge. Don't be timid. Don't hold back. Look at this. I've gone to a lot of trouble to stockpile materials for the sanctuary of God. 100,000 talents, 3,775 tons of gold. 1,000,000 talents, 37,750 tons of silver. Tons of bronze and iron, too much to weigh, and all this timber and stone. You're free to add more, and workers both plentiful and prepared, stone cutters, masons, carpenters, artisans in gold and silver, bronze and iron. You're all set. Get to work, and Godspeed. David gave orders to all of Israel's leaders to help his son Solomon, saying, "Isn't it obvious that your God is present with you, that he has given you peaceful relations with everyone around? My part in this was to put down the enemies, subdue the land to God and his people. Your part is to give yourselves, heart and soul, to praying to your God. So get moving. Build the sacred house of worship to God. Then bring the chest of the covenant of God and all the holy furnishings for the worship of God into the sanctuary built in honor of God. Chapter 23. Preparations for worship. When David got to be an old man, he made his son Solomon king over Israel. At the same time, he brought together all the leaders of Israel, the priests and the Levites. The Levites 30 years and older were counted. The total was 38,000. David sorted them into work groups. 24,000 are in charge of administering worship in the sanctuary. 6,000 are officials and judges. 4,000 are security guards, and 4,000 are to serve in the orchestra, praising God with instruments that I have provided for praise. David then divided the Levites into groupings named after the sons of Levi: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The Gershonites, Ladan and Shimei. The three sons of Ladan, Jehiel, Zetham, and Joel. The three sons of Shimei, Shelomith, Hazael, and Haran, all heads of the families of Ladan. The four sons of Shimei, Jahath, Ziza, Jeush, and Beriah. Jahath came first, followed by Ziza. Jeush and Beriah did not have many sons, so they were counted as one family with one task. The four sons of Kohath, Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. The sons of Amram, Aaron and Moses. Aaron was especially ordained to work in the Holy of Holies, to burn incense before God, to serve God and bless his name always. This was a permanent appointment for Aaron and his sons. Moses and his sons were counted in the tribe of Levi. The sons of Moses, Gershom and Eleazar. Shubael was the first son of Gershom. Rehabiah was the first and only son of Eleazar. But though Eleazar had no other sons, Rehabiah had many sons. Shelomith was the first son of Izhar. Hebron had four sons: Jeriah, Amariah, Jehaziel, and Jekameam. Uzziel had two sons, Micah and Ishiah. The sons of Merari, Malai and Mushi. The sons of Malai, Eleazar and Kish. Eleazar died without any sons, only daughters. Their cousins, the sons of Kish, married the daughters. Mushi had three sons, Malai, Eder, and Jeremoth. These are the sons of Levi 20 years and older, divided up according to families and heads of families, and listed in the work groups that took care of the worship in the sanctuary of God. David said, "Now that the God of Israel has given rest to his people and made Jerusalem his permanent home, the Levites no longer have to carry the tabernacle and all the furniture required for the work of worship." These last words of David referred only to Levites 20 years old and above. From now on, the assigned work of the Levites was to assist Aaron's sons in the work of worship in God's house, maintain courtyards and closets, keep the furniture and utensils of worship clean, take care of any extra work needed in the work of worship, and provide bread for the table and flour for the meal offerings and the unraised wafers, all baking and mixing, all measuring and weighing. Also, they were to be present for morning prayers, thanking and praising God, for evening prayers, and at the service of whole burnt offerings to God on Sabbath, at new moons, and at all festivals. They were on regular duty to serve God according to their assignment and the required number. In short, the Levites, with the sons of Aaron as their companions in the ministry of holy worship, were responsible for everything that had to do with worship, the place and times and ordering of worship.